Some of it's horrifying. These people are going to destroy our industry with this kind of talk. That kind of theory that I'm just going to throw a lot of stuff at the wall and some of it will, by golly, stick because even a blind squirrel roots up a nut every once in a while. It's a ridiculous approach to any business.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. Hello and welcome to episode 214. My guest today believes that wholesaling is the simplest, quickest, lowest risk, and lowest hassle way to make money in real estate today. But you have to know the right strategies for finding properties, attracting buyers, and getting to the close. That's why I'm excited to be talking with Vena Jones-Cox, who is also known as the Real Estate Goddess. Vena is a self-described real estate geek who has done it all. Landlording, flipping, wholesaling, you name it. Vena does at least 50 real estate deals every year, focusing on finding great deals and then lease optioning or wholesaling properties to new buyers. She teaches thousands of other investors how to do the same. Vena is the past president of the Cincinnati REIA, the Ohio REIA, and the National REIA, and she will be a featured speaker at the 2020 Michigan Landlord and Real Estate Investor Annual Conference and Expo in Grand Rapids, Michigan, this month, February 27th through 29th. Go to rpoaonline.org to find out more. Vena will be sharing how you can quickly generate massive cash flow by jump-starting your wholesaling business. And you can also listen to my previous conversation with Vena on episode number 55. Vena, welcome back to the show.
I am so glad to be here, Brian. Thank you for inviting me again.
Well, it's great to have you back, and I'm thrilled that you're coming back to speak at our conference. It was a big hit last time. Why don't you give us a glimpse of what you'll be talking about?
Well, I'm going to be sharing sort of the big picture of how wholesaling works, like the steps to making a wholesale deal, because I'm finding more and more that people have like a very limited view of what it actually takes to get from I don't know how to wholesale to I'm getting checks regularly. And unfortunately, that view's being propagated by a lot of the stuff online, YouTube University, all those sorts of things where, I don't know, they make it sound like it's step one, decide to wholesale. Step two, cash your check. And there's actually...
It's kind of like that Steve Martin joke on how to make $1 million. Step one, get $1 million.
Yes. Yes. And I get it. Wholesaling is a really exciting strategy, and people hear about it and they recognize that it's a thing that you can get into without having a ton of money and a ton of credit, but that doesn't mean it's not a business that you have to understand the steps of, and there's a couple of key skills that you have to master within the wholesaling world, and it's the same skills you have to have no matter what you're doing in real estate, right? You have to be able to source deals. You have to be able to evaluate them. What's it worth? What's it going to cost to make it worth that? You got to be able to do a little bit of light negotiating, and you've got to understand the contracts. And if some piece of that is missing, the checks will not come.
Let's talk about that. I mean, what's some of the material and bad advice you're seeing out there that some wholesalers are picking up on?
Well, some of it's just misleading. It just glosses over the reality that you're going to talk to a lot of sellers and run a lot of comps and make a lot of offers that get turned down, and that's just part of the business. You just make more offers. Some of it's horrifying. So some of it, I read it and I think these people are going to destroy our industry with this kind of talk. And an example that I saw recently on one of the social media pages devoted to wholesaling was someone asked a question, which was of every property that you put under contract, so every seller who accepts an offer, how many of those contracts should you expect to be able to sell? And then, of course, the buyer closes them. And this guy jumps in and he says, you put 15 properties under contract, 2 of them you sell and 1 goes to closing. And I thought, in what world is that a good business model? In what world does leaving 14 out of 15 sellers that you have signed a contract with high and dry after 30 or 45 days look good, make money? You wonder why sometimes wholesalers have a bad reputation amongst our elected officials and amongst buyers, right? Members of real estate associations. And the answer is that kind of theory that I'm just going to throw a lot of stuff at the wall and some of it will, by golly, stick because even a blind squirrel roots up a nut every once in a while. It's a ridiculous approach to any business. That's like saying I'm going to start a coffee shop and I'm just going to make cups of coffee and 1 out of 15 of them will sell and that'll be great. The theory underlying that is just put anything under contract that somebody will sign and then throw out bad deals to your buyers list. Because why didn't 14 of them sell? They weren't good deals. A wholesale deal that doesn't sell within a week is not a good deal. And you get this terrible reputation amongst buyers for not having good deals and leave sellers who, believe that you were going to get their property closed feeling like, I don't know what just happened, but it wasn't good because this guy's not returning my phone calls anymore. And that's just, it's such a me-centric approach, right? I'm going to do what I have to do to get a check and never mind what happens to anybody else. I think if you're serious about any business and you want to be in it for the long term and you want it to be profitable and positively affect the people it touches, you have to buckle down and say, I'm going to learn this small handful of things that you got to learn, and I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to close 100% of the properties I get under contract. Now, is that realistic? No, because sometimes you get a seller who neglects to mention that he has $1 million IRS lien on his $25,000 house, or you have a property that truly does fail inspection, right? We had one this time last year that my partner went to look at it on a Monday. We put it under contract. On Saturday, a buyer went to look at it and called and said, this house has a terrible, awful foundation problem. Like there's this giant crack in the house. And my partner said that no, you were looking at the wrong house. That's impossible. And he went back and looked at it, and it had literally, we'd had a huge torrential rainstorms all summer last summer, and the house had literally started to slip down the hill in the 8 days since he had seen it. And he's like, I swear I didn't miss this giant crack. Here's the picture I took, and here's the picture the buyer took. So things do happen. I mean, obviously we didn't close on that property that needed $100,000 more in work 8 days later than it did when we put it under contract. And that sort of thing does happen, but it should not be because you didn't know what an investor would pay for that property, and therefore you put it under contract at a price that no investor was going to pay.
What other practices and advice are out there that you disagree with and that you believe are giving wholesalers a bad name? Some of
the wholesalers that I deal with in my office, because I also buy properties, and I have zero problem with buying one from a wholesaler if it's a good deal and I didn't find it, right? I think the biggest misunderstanding out there probably has to do with virtual wholesaling and this grass is always greener thing. People in cheap markets, Michigan, Ohio, places like that, tend to think that wholesaling must be better in San Diego, where the median house price is $350. And people in San Diego, of course, think that Grand Rapids is better because, oh, look how cheap the properties are. So instead of learning their own market, making relationships with buyers in their own market, understanding values, rents, construction in their own market, do we replace windows here or don't we, right? They get kind of sucked into this idea that, there's virtual wholesaling and you never have to see the property and nobody has to see the property and you just put it up online and somebody will buy it. And the result and how do you figure out what it's worth? Well, look at the Zestimate, which is what we call a fake number. And I get these calls from people in Seattle saying, oh, I have this property under contract and I've been trying to sell it for 60 days. And somebody told me that you're a really serious buyer. So I'm calling you. And I say, all right, give me the address. And they tell me, and I say, please tell me the number out of your mouth is not going to be more than $25,000 because I made an offer on that same house a year ago for $25,000. And I'm guessing it's not better today than it was a year ago. And they say, oh no, I've got it under contract for 55. The tax value is 100. And I say, well, obviously you didn't have anybody go into it because it doesn't even have walls. They have no idea what it is they're dealing with. And if I lived in Seattle, I would be wholesaling in Seattle. If I lived in Grand Rapids, I'd be wholesaling in Grand Rapids. Wherever you are, there are buyers, there are deals, the process is basically the same, and the zeros might move around a little bit. There might be some more zeros before the decimal point, or less, depending on where you live. But I don't know. These folks get sold a bill of goods about, buy my software and it'll find the deals, it'll evaluate the deals, it'll sell the deals for you, and you never have to do a thing. And whenever I hear that pitch, I kind of say, okay, so if you can buy and sell deals all over the country without doing a thing, why are you selling software? Why aren't you just buying and selling deals all over the country without doing a thing? And it's not that tech and software and lead management databases and databases that help you build your buyers list. Not those things aren't important. It's just that they are not a substitute. High tech is not a substitute for high touch. We can automate an awful lot of the wholesaling business, but some human being has to be evaluating these properties accurately so that we can put them under contract for the right price so that we can sell them and make the money we're looking to make.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. And their first month's management fee will be half off for all new clients who sign up between now and the RPOA's annual conference in February. So what does that involve? Physically inspecting the property? What all should you be doing?
Yeah, somebody who's got, if not the expertise to estimate repairs, at least instruction about what to look for, what to take pictures of, what to note in a property, because there's really only two numbers that are really important in a wholesale deal. One is what's its value after repairs are made, and the other one is what are the repairs and what are they going to cost. So a property worth $100,000 that needs 5 in repair is obviously going to sell for more than one worth $100,000 that needs 25 in repair. And you better not think that a roof, gutters, furnace, central air, plumbing, wiring, kitchen, bath, carpet, paint, and landscaping costs $5,000, or you are consistently going to be putting properties under contract and then wondering why no one is beating down your door trying to buy them from you. So on the automation side, some of the automation is technological and some of it is people. My partner and I, over the last year or two, have started reaching out into more rural markets around our city. So we're in a 5-county area that's pretty highly populated, and then outside of those 5 counties, you're either in farmland or mountains, much more sparsely settled. Also, way away. Like any of these counties I'm talking about takes me an hour one way to drive to. And we got interested in these rural markets partly because we do a lot of contracts for deed. We sell a lot of properties on contracts for deed, and those are very popular markets to do that in. But the ones that don't work as a repair for equity type deal, we wholesale. I'm not driving an hour to take a first look at a property. I don't have time to do that. So we just hire people and give them a set of instructions about, you need to go into the property and then you need to take this set of 78 photos and you need to send them to us. And that's how we make the initial decision about things like repair costs. So anything like that can be handled. I have a lot of students who they start out wholesaling while working full-time jobs, and taking calls from sellers during the day when they're at work is a real problem. So they solve the problem with an answering service or a virtual assistant or someone else who can get the basic information, email it to them, give them enough information to make some decisions before they call back and talk to the seller themselves. So it's not that you can't have other people doing some of this work. It's that at some point somebody who has some knowledge has to look at the comps, look at the potential repairs, determine what a reasonable offer price would be and make that offer. And that's what you get paid for as a wholesaler, is having that knowledge.
It sounds like you figured out, or you have systems where you automate it, but even that automation involves training people who will actually go out and physically look at the property for you and take pictures and be able to leverage whatever knowledge you've given them to help them understand what it is they should be looking at. Why is it that people still believe, hey, I can just look at something online and use my keyboard and I don't have to do any of that physical part or automate it or have a team? I can just do it all from my computer. Why do you think people tend to gravitate toward that?
Everybody gravitates toward it's no work. I mean, that's the world's best sales pitch. It's no work. All you have to do is buy the software, join the platform, whatever. So part of it is just a pitch that sounds really appealing, but doesn't work for people in real life. Part of it is a simple lack of contact with other people who are actually in the business. And that's why I really encourage people not just to join, but to attend their local real estate association, because you get disabused of a lot of that kind of, I don't know, real estate mythology that you might see on YouTube, or if you're watching late night TV, they make it sound super duper easy, right? Heck, half the shows on HGTV about rehabbing have me throwing stuff at the screen because I'm like, man, they sure made that $100,000 rehab look like it was done in 28 minutes. But being around real estate investors and talking to them, right? Coming to the meeting before the meeting, staying till the meeting, after the meeting, coming to conferences, using the time between the sessions that you want to attend to just have conversations with people who are actually doing the business. There's no substitute for live. I have this conversation with millennials from time to time where they say, real estate associations and live events, they're going the way of the dinosaur because everything can be done online now. They just sit in my kitchen and watch the simulcast. except you don't get to talk to the human beings. And the talking to the human beings overall in your real estate career, if you look at it over the span of decades like I have, the other human beings are going to be 70% of your success.
That's absolutely true. And you're the past president of the Cincinnati RIA, the Ohio RIA, and even the national RIA. So you, of all people, know how important it is to surround yourself with people who are out there really doing it and have real informed opinions on how it should be done.
And let me add that I'm an introvert. So going to conferences and talking to 300 people over the course of 4 days one-on-one it's very draining for me. It's like, I'm tired when I'm finished, but I've also got 300 new people that I can contact when, some random lead comes in from Kansas City, and I'm not doing anything with that lead, but hey, I met 2 people from Kansas City at the conference, and I'm going to send the lead over to them, and maybe they can do a favor for me later on. And I met a guy who does senior housing, and I'm real interested in senior housing, so I'm going to see if I can set up a phone call with him and find out if I can maybe come look at one of his properties. That's how you get kind of the real life part of it. Now, we have all invested a lot of money in our education. I don't even want to say how much money I have invested in my education, but if you could see the 3 bookshelves behind me that are so packed with home study courses that I've had to put them in sideways on top of other home study courses. The formal education part, the part about how does this strategy work? What do the contracts look like? How do I evaluate properties? How do I do the exit strategy, whatever that is? We invest in, because we can't expect somebody to sit across from us at a table at Wendy's and explain wholesaling. It's the building of the relationships that later become mentorships or coaching relationships or accountability relationships or even monetary relationships, right? Like I've met people at RIA that we both started out at the same time, and now 20, 25 years later, we're doing deals together. You need money, I've got it. I'll put money in your deal. I need money, you've got it. Maybe we'll partner up on some stuff. And that is not conveyed to you by the fact that you belong to the association. Like the membership card does not get you an in. It's that people see your face and you talk to them and you ask them questions about themselves and what they do. And, you go out for a drink after the meeting, and it's a thing that happens only by showing up.
Yeah, and there's something magic about that too. I really believe that to be successful as a real estate investor, no matter what your niche might be, you really have to make an investment into being good at that niche and that type of real estate investing. And that could be just investing your time by going to RIA meetings or RPOA meetings, becoming a member. Or going to like the annual conference that we're hosting and you're going to be speaking at. And I'll say this too, I really think that people who are serious about wholesaling or whatever it might be, sometimes it's very important to actually pay for the package and get the real training.
You can get it off of YouTube University, but it will be wrong, probably outdated, maybe not as ethical as you would like to be. Mm-hmm. That's another issue with sort of new investors who learn things outside of a community of real estate investors, is they don't have the frame of reference to understand whether a particular thing that they are being told or have thought of is ethical. It sometimes things seems like this is the obvious answer, but if you asked other people who do the business about it, they could give you some lessons on why that's not a good thing to do. And the key example being the guy who thinks it's okay to close 1 out of every 15 deals. That it might work for him in the sense that he's able to generate a lot of contracts to throw out there, but how does it work for the other people? How does it work for the sellers? How does it work for the poor buyers who either wasted their time going to look at a property that he didn't actually know anything about and was putting numbers to that didn't really exist? And how does it work for the buyers who didn't know any better than to buy a bad deal?
When you come speak at the annual conference, your topic is on how to quickly generate massive cash flow by jumpstarting your wholesaling business. What are some of the best practices that you're going to be teaching us?
Well, I think I'm gonna spend some time on how wholesaling differs in hot markets versus cold markets, because I've been through this upcoming recession that I think we're going to be seeing here shortly, will be my fourth, quote, down market that I've been through. And the process of wholesaling is exactly the same whether the market is raging hot or whether it's 2009 or at the bottom of the market and there's nothing but deals and nobody to buy them. The basic 5-step process that I'm going to go through is the same. What changes is where your focus is. In slower markets like what we would typically get during a recession, where inventory rises, prices stagnate, or even maybe drop a little bit, the wild interest in real estate that we've seen over the last it's really been obvious in the last 3 years, but it's been growing over the last 7 years. That dims a lot when people are afraid of losing their jobs and aren't so anxious to just jump in with both feet. And the result of that is that the buyers who increase the amount that they're buying in the recession are more experienced buyers. I know personally, I'm looking forward to gathering up at least another 30 to 40 rental properties while this recession lasts. I haven't bought more than 2 in the last 12 months, and I'm waiting for prices to go down and inventory to go up, and then I'm going to collect a whole bunch of them, and then I'm going to be set. Like that, won't need to buy any more rentals after that to retire on. But if you're going to sell a wholesale deal to me, your numbers have to be right. You got to know how to get my attention. You got to know where to find me and people like me, right? Because it's not going to be a matter anymore of just, I stuck up a sign on a corner and within 3 hours I had 50 phone calls from super anxious buyers. That's not the case in a recession. Now, the good news is, as the market slows down, deals get a lot easier. So your focus turns from a lot of effort put into rounding up the deals to more effort put into rounding up the right buyers. So that's as the market changes and I teach wholesaling, I'm teaching slightly different things, because I know last time I was at the convention, everybody was like, "Oh my God, you just don't know how hot the market is around here." Yeah, right. Because it wasn't like that in the whole rest of the United States too. and now that I see the market as slowing down, I think it should be a better year for people to get into wholesaling, because a lot of the barriers to entry will be removed. But if they're still trying to do it the way it worked in 2016, they're gonna be in for a big surprise about how many properties they're able to put under contract, but then how much harder it is to get buyers' attention because there's lots of deals around.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that you're seeing the market slowing down, but where we are right now, the economy is still very strong, and it sounds like you're anticipating a recession. Are you seeing the market slowing down for wholesaling because prices have just gotten so high?
No, right now in most of the country, and it's interesting because a few months ago I did a trip kind of around the whole region here. A lot of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Tennessee, looking at different markets and talking to people about what was happening in those specific markets. And it is clear that with the exception of a few of a few of the submarkets that were really late in recovery, that the rate of increase in house prices is already slowing drastically. Like markets that were having almost double-digit increases in price for several years in a row, suddenly in 2019 had a 2.8% increase, and that's not even the rate of inflation, right? And that's because of real estate getting overpriced. It just got to the point where people's incomes weren't keeping up with what it costs to buy a property. However, all of those markets still have relatively low income and low days on market. So what's happening is not that houses aren't selling, it's that you can't jack the price up 10% over what it would have sold for last year and expect it to sell. It's got to be reasonable in your price. The reason I think that there's going to be a recession is, well, A, we're just due. We're in like the longest economic expansion in history in the U.S. history at this point. B, the behavior of the stock market over the last 12 to 18 months has been, there's some bad news and it dives, and there's some good news and it recovers, and there's some bad news. It's a little unstable, right? And even Warren Buffett, he's got that Buffett indicator that I don't understand all the numbers that go into it, but basically when Warren Buffett says something about the stock market, I just tend to believe it. And the Buffett indicator says the stock market is going to be going down next year, or in 2020 rather.
Do you think we'll see a repeat of what happened in 2008, 2009?
No. We're not due for that. We're not due for that until 2025 or 2026.
Okay, so you have a better crystal ball than I do.
Well, there's a lot of folks in real estate that the recession they remember is the Great Recession. They weren't in the market during the recession in 2001 and 2002, for instance, and they're much shorter and shallower. They tend to last like 12 to 24 months, and overall prices will drop maybe 7 or 8%. But what does happen is days on market increases a lot, and the amount of inventory increases a lot. So they're not nearly as bottom has fallen out of the market scary as the Great Recession was. I actually came in to real estate right at the end of the prior housing cycle. In 1989 was when I started, and if anybody wants to get out a history book, the thing that immediately preceded that crash in the housing market was A, very high interest rates, and B, the savings and loan scandal. And the U.S. government ended up taking over a bunch of properties from savings and loans, so that it took a little while to work through all of that inventory. So I was in basically the up market to the cycle through the mid-cycle slowdown in 01, and then up through 07, 08 when the market crashed and burned, and then all the way through all of that. And what I'm expecting at this point is a 2001 type slowdown, not a 2009 type slowdown.
But then it sounds like you're projecting out further to like 2025, 2026, to where you think we'll hit an even bigger bump.
Yeah, folks need to Google 18-year real estate cycle and really read up on it, because it's not as simple as, hey, every 18 years these things happen, but there are always signs that precede a real crash, and one of those signs is over-exuberance in the lending market. It's financing that always drives real estate crashes, and when banks start just throwing money at people, driver's license only applications, that sort of thing, the people respond to all that easy money by borrowing it, and borrowing it on things that they wouldn't necessarily borrow it on if rates were higher and it wasn't so simple to get your hands on money. And the result of that is overbuilding. Builders just straight up build too many houses because they've got the money to do it. But they build more houses than there are people to live in them. And we are clearly not there. Builders haven't kept up with demand since 2009. So we are nowhere near overbuilding, and we are nowhere near banks allowing that or encouraging that by giving away too much money too easily.
You certainly saw that, though, leading up to 2007. A lot of overbuilding. And a lot of easy money, too. Mm-hmm. So what's the takeaway, then, for wholesalers? I mean, is it a green light, yellow light, red light?
It is a green light if. It's a green light if you got your skills together, you really understand how the process works, you're able to deal with these more sophisticated investors, these more experienced people. I mean, you gotta know how to talk to them. You got to know what they're looking for. You've got to know how to show them that you've got it. The really good news about these recessions, and more so even in the Great Recession, is that the competition in the wholesaling business tends to dry up, and it's purely psychological. It's not that people are going out of business because there's no deals to be done or no one to buy them. It's that they get scared. And so they back off from wholesaling and from real estate in general right when they should be doubling down, because I don't know, if I said, hey, Brian, next year, half of your competition will disappear. There will be twice as many deals on the market. You'll be able to get them cheaper and more easily. Would you be like, well, I should step back and not be in real estate next year? Obviously, you buy when other people are selling and sell when other people are buying, right? That's how you arbitrage anything. So the only other thing that I would say to wholesalers is, don't get obsessed with wholesaling everything you get your hands on while the market's down. Keep some of it. That's your long term, right? There's a lot of stuff that I sold wholesale in 2008, 9, 10, which were great years, by the way. Did a ton of deals in those years. I did more wholesale deals in 2009 than I did in 2006, probably twice the number. But there's some of those things I look at, some of those properties I look at now, and I say, I wish I had kept it. Even if I'd had to have a partner put up the money and split the deal, I wish I'd kept it, because of course now it's doubled in value and the rents have doubled and the neighborhoods are coming around. And I think, man, I made $7,000 off that deal, and if I'd have kept it, I'd have $50,000 in equity right now. I
started buying multifamily in 2008. And boy, it was great because I was the only one out there buying. And it was definitely a buyer's market. And there were so many deals I passed up that I look at now and I'm like, boy, I wish I bought those too.
Yeah, they didn't seem like such a great deal when you really wanted a 10 or 12 cap. But now that people are buying those same properties at a 5 cap,
yeah,
man, I didn't have to keep owning it. I could have just owned it for 6 years and then sold it.
Oh, if I could have just done that, just bought and held as much as possible. But you never know when you're going through it. You never know when the light at the tunnel is going to appear. There's
actually a pretty good roadmap out there if you just study what has happened in other real estate cycles and talk to people who have been through other real estate cycles. I promise you, when I get to that convention and I say, so who here has been in the real estate market for more than 20 years? And how many of you are really looking forward to there being a recession? They're going to be jumping out of their seats going, me, because they've experienced it before and they know that it's bargain time.
Well, Vena, you're going to be speaking this month at the 2020 Michigan Landlord and Real Estate Investor Annual Conference and Expo right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. As we wrap it up here, can you just tell our audience why they need to come hear you speak?
Wholesaling is a strategy that I think ought to be in everybody's tool bag, because if you don't know how to do it and you're in real estate, you are walking away from a lot of money that you don't need to be walking away from. People ask me, why do you still wholesale? You're not a beginner. And I say, it's not a beginner strategy. I mean, it is a beginner strategy, but it's not a strategy just for beginners. I think most folks who are in retailing, who are in landlording even, if they really kind of search their memories for deals that they passed on, not because they weren't good, but because they just weren't good for that investor, too far away, or needed more work than I like to do, or wasn't in the school system that I like, or I like one families and it was a two family, or whatever the reason is. The numbers were right, but they passed anyway. And said to themselves, what if I'd gone ahead and put it under contract for $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 less than what I would have been willing to pay had it been my deal, and I just passed it on to somebody who it was a great deal for. And then you start adding those up and saying, how much cash have I walked away from on properties I wouldn't have had to rehab, wouldn't have had to manage, wouldn't have had to find the money to buy it. You might want to stop at some point because you'll just depress yourself. So people who are already in the real estate business and don't understand what the wholesale process is and how to pick up what if you only did one or two deals a year and only made $15,000 or $20,000 extra dollars? Would that help with your rental reserves? Would it help with a down payment on a next house? Would it help just to, have some cash socked away? And of course, new investors, usually when they explore all the different strategies that are out there, settle on wholesaling because it's an easy introduction to the market where you learn most of what you need to know to do all the other strategies too, and can put checks in your pocket, right? Proof of concept, shut up checks for those people around you who say, you're never going to get into real estate. You never followed up on anything in your life, or whatever negative thing they are saying to you. When you whip out a check and say, yeah, I messed this deal up, I only have $7,000 as a result, they tend to back off and start believing in you as much as you do. So I think it's an important strategy for everybody. And the way I present it is very much, here's what you got to do, and here's how you have to do it. And if you're looking for a lot of rah-rah and you're going to be rich tomorrow and all that kind of stuff, maybe go to YouTube instead. But if you want to really understand how it works and what the possibilities are and what you're going to need to grab a hold of those possibilities, come see me.
When you were at the Grand Rapids RPOA annual conference last time, it was a big hit. The room was packed. We're thrilled to have you back again this year. It's the 2020 Michigan Landlord and Real Estate Investor Annual Conference and Expo, which is February 27th through 29th. And Vena, I really appreciate you coming on today and just, talking about what the market is like right now, the downturn you're expecting and what that means for wholesaling. And then also just what are the things that worry you about the reputation wholesalers are getting and how you're trying to teach people best practices. Thanks again for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I really enjoyed it.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.